I'm representing the group Siskiyou Progressives. We're a local political organization doing voter education and outreach. Thank you, candidates, for being here tonight. So this is in question and answer format, and since most everybody's probably somewhat familiar with you, I'm just going to have you please say your name so that everyone can connect the name to the face. So we'll start with John Adamson. Go ahead and...
John Adamson.
There we go.
Barbara Wagner.
John Stackflat.
Rosalind McCoy.
Paul Engstrom.
Great. And we do have that microphone. Andy, would you...
The microphone. The microphone.
If you want more introductory information on the candidates, we posted it on our website, siskiyouprogressives.org. There was also a really great write-up on each of the candidates in the paper that you can find. But for tonight, we're going to get straight to the questions that we received from our community. Some people that can't be here tonight did submit questions knowing that we were going to videotape and that they could see your answers later.
Okay.
Great.
Who's going to be our first contestant?
Wonderful.
Let me ask you about the format very quickly.
Sure.
Are we all answering the same question?
Everyone's answering the same questions. So we'll have a 2-minute time limit. If you can, just answer as quickly and succinctly as you possibly can, but I will cut you off at 2 minutes.
Could I ask that you, at a minute and a half, to say 30 seconds?
Sure, I'll
Stop.
give you a little signal.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, so our first question from the top of the pile. If you are elected to City Council, would you recuse yourself from discussing, acting on, or voting on a proposed ordinance if it were to personally or financially benefit you?
Absolutely. One, State Fair Political Practices Commission overlooks that kind of thing in the first place. So you actually have a state agency that's in charge of that. Second part of that, and I'll give you a classic example. The Orchard property down where Ream crosses the freeway was owned by my family, and one of our houses is still on the original half acre from a ranch we had there, 140 acres, back around 1900. I would recuse myself from that for the simple reason that there's a family connection. I've made that plain and open to everybody that I know that they want that to be annexed, but it's not right for me to have a part or a play in any of that at all.
Thank you.
My answer is also yes. There's actually a law that says if you're within 100 feet of a property, that you really should recuse yourself from doing any vote that might affect your property as a result of that election. So I would recuse myself for anything that's involved with the elementary school, for example, because I'm very close to that property, and possibly writing as well. So yes, definitely you must recuse yourself, otherwise you're subjecting yourself to a possible lawsuit, etc. Other, what do you call it? Slaps on the hand.
I definitely would recuse myself, and as far as my potential conflicts, I only rent around the block here. I do work for a company called Alsco, and there might be some situations where my situation would benefit from something going on at the city council level, and I might need some advice, but I would readily recuse myself if there was any potential conflict. The other thing I do is with the Siskiyou ice rink, and there is some interaction between the city and the rec district, and I would have to probably get some advice there too if there was ever a vote that might be seen as a conflict of interest there. So I would seek help if I needed it with some of these votes. So the answer is yes.
Of course, I believe in obeying the law, and if you don't like the laws, then you got to step forward and change them. So yes, I would imagine if something happened on Lake Street that directly impacted me, of course, I mean, that's just the law.
Absolutely. I like to sleep at night, and if I don't do what's right in my heart, I don't sleep well at night, so absolutely. And I would always seek legal advice, even if it was remotely close. So.
Excellent. Okay, so that was your easy question for the night. All right, next question. How are you financing your campaign? Have you or would you take money from any corporate interests, including Crystal Geyser?
I'm not taking money from anybody. I've spent, I think, $125 for signs, $4.50 for screws to put the signs in stakes that I paid $38 for. That's all I've spent, and that's all I'm going to spend. So, no, I don't take money from anybody, just, it's all mine. That's all I'm going to spend.
No, I don't think Crystal Geyser would want to give me any money. I've had a few donors, community members that have contributed. I put a statement in the voter handbook, and I'm reusing signs from other candidates in the past. They gave me the signs, and I've had help with printing my name and putting the names on the signs, and I've used my old signs, so I don't think that there's a lot more that needs to be spent.
And not, nor will I take any contributions from anyone, private or corporate. I will be paying, I have paid and will pay for my own private reserves. And those things at this point are for some door hangers and signs, yard signs. It's under $1,000. I was thinking about possibly putting banner ads on TV. That would be very much money. And possibly some ads in the paper. But I'm hesitating with both of those things. The limit that we sign on to voluntarily is $2,000. I'll come in well under that. Thank you.
Yes, I've funded my campaign with my own finances, and so when there are people who offer to support me, I readily accept. So far, it's been somewhere like $50. Someone has been offered, I haven't actually received that money yet, but a promise to support me. And I've been going door to door for about the past 20 days. So I've been meeting the representatives. I had having some very nice conversations. And suddenly in the mail, I got a $10 check from one of the persons I had talked to. So I am pleasantly pleased to receive in small doses your support. Thank you.
So I have not received any money, nor have I asked for any money from any organizations. My idea in approaching this was to keep it as grassroots as possible. I had some old card stock, so I started making up business cards instead of flyers. People seem to keep those in their pocket a little longer than throwing a flyer down on the ground. I have been asked to go ahead. I will stand by it. I'm not going to be putting up any yard signs, so to speak, or ask any of the businesses. I do have a couple of businesses in town that do want to put up some banners and some signs, and I'm going to go ahead and allow that. But the purchase of the signs and the banners and anything else will be out of my pocket and no one else.
Thank you. Next question. How do you feel about the recent issues with Officer Lopi intimidating ethnic groups during election time? What will you do to prevent this from happening again?
Having been both a state and federal police officer, I understand exactly probably what's going on here, and it's illegal as hell. I don't think there's any question about that. That said, I'm not working for the Sheriff's Department. I'm not working for the feds anymore. I really don't have a clear-cut idea as to actually what took place, whatever. All I do know, or at least what I've read, is that it is being looked into by the state, and we'll all read about it and find out what's going to happen next. As far as doing anything about it, we're to basically, if I were to see it happen in front of me, yeah, I'd probably step in and I would probably say something about it. But as far as doing anything, I'm not so sure that at this point that really has a lot to do with local politics and the running of the city government.
Yes, I too was horrified when I heard about what John Lopi was doing. I heard it through the grapevine. It's always good to check your facts. I also saw an article in the paper that there is currently a lawsuit going on. We have to be sensitive about our jurisdictions. So this is the city council seat. So our jurisdiction is city. Now, I know John Lopi is a sheriff, and so he was doing this, I believe, in the Wairika area. Yes, out of our jurisdiction, but definitely disapproved of that action wholeheartedly.
Anytime someone's franchise rights are infringed, I tend to get very upset about that. And in addition to that, one of the candidates for this office was approached to maybe not run, and I thought that was inappropriate. But the question is, for city council folks, what is it that we can do? And I am unsure whether the city can get involved with an election. The only place where votes are made is right here. And if it's possible for the city council to help with managing and preventing intimidation, then that would be appropriate for the city council to promote, and I would promote that. I do know some of the details regarding what the sheriff did, and I find it very disappointing, and hopefully it will cease going forward.
I was very disappointed in Sheriff Lopi to hear this kind of thing happening. But again, it's intimidation. And I think it's really important in the city that city council members do not intimidate the public. And I'm afraid to say that over the last few years, I've seen it at city council meetings, that intimidation has happened. And I was disappointed that other city council members did not really speak up in defense of the public. So that's one thing that I will stand up for the public if I'm on this side of the seats, that city council cannot be intimidating the public.
I don't really know too much about it, to be honest with you. I'm really opposed to the violation of anybody's civil rights if that occurred. And that's just something that I'm strongly against, violation of that. And any kind of intimidation of any kind, whether it be from city council, police officers, sheriffs, anybody in government, it's not a way that I'd like to see things operate. We talk. You know, there's times a police officer has to be a police officer, but to go out and intimidate somebody and violate civil rights and their rights is, I'm totally against that. So, and again, I don't know exactly what happened, but now I'll look into it. I'll call Sheriff Lopi and talk to him personally.
Okay. So this question we've gotten in various forms, so I'm just going to try to sum it up here. It's one that I think everyone wants to know. Is, where do you stand on water privatization, water bottling companies, Crystal Geyser? What's happening with our water here? What's happening with water privatization in general? And what would you do to protect our water rights for our local community?
I didn't think you were going to ask that question. Well, there's an EIR out that hasn't been completed. I'm anxious to see that. Our community is in dire need of jobs. I love Mount Shasta. I've been here permanently since 1976, and it's my home. I believe in protecting our environment and protecting our waters. If Crystal Geyser were to go in, it would have to be stringent monitoring and regulations. It is in the county, but it is in our sphere of influence. I wish it were in the city limits of Mount Shasta, but it isn't. So I don't want to dodge. I really don't want to dodge this question. I really don't. I think there might be room for compromise in this. I understand the opposition completely. And I respect everybody's opinion, whether you're on this side or you're on that side. And whichever way it goes is the way I'm gonna be okay with it. So when the EIR comes out, I'm gonna make my decision. On paper, it looks plausible, but I don't know about monitoring. If there's not correct monitoring, I'd be very much opposed to it.
Okay, so I'll just piggyback on this question. So then, how will you be voting on Measure H, the groundwater initiative?
I don't know yet. I've just started studying it. Another thing. I really dislike government intruding into my business more than they have to, but I know that we have to have regulations. I don't know constitutionally if it will, from what little I've read, if it's going to stay or if it'll be thrown out. So, I'm waffling.
Okay, let's move on to Russell. Thank you.
Paul Eckert began to negotiate with Crystal Geyser to get city water from them. He wouldn't say if it was being purchased or given. Huge red flag for me. The city has talked about putting in a well up around Crystal Geyser area. And so that would be direct competition. So that water would be directly or indirectly a part of the city water system. And so our extraction code should apply to them. They're not a water bottling company, and so we should know how much water they are pulling. For 2 years, the city council said no, it's totally separate, but since they've been talking about getting water from that end of town, it really brings it even more crucial for us to pay attention to how much water is being pulled, and from the EIR, are they really doing a new study on the wells? Because it's going to be a legal question if we're going to be able to apply our own city code to that area, because it is directly or indirectly a part of our water system. The second question, Measure H, yes, I don't believe that a water bottling company should be exempt from the same regulation as anyone else. And that's basically what this is it starts out and says Siskiyou County is responsible to protect all groundwater, and to then interpret that no, it's only to protect a basin as seen by Sacramento, and that's a moving target, and you don't base law on a moving target. So just put it across the board, all Siskiyou County and water bottling companies will comply like everyone else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the original question was about privatization of water, right? So there's privatization of water going on more than just in bottling plants. There's water being used for private uses, from residences to ranches and farms. And my feeling is that it's unavoidable. There will be private uses of water. The question is, will we going to regulate them in a comprehensive way for the purposes of conserving water? And I would be in favor, countywide, of coming up in a very democratic, thoroughgoing way, a plan to conserve water. The fact that we have a potential 2 new bottling plants coming in, something that would have to be added into that discussion. The other one, besides this Crystal Geyser plant, is the one in McLeod. My impression is that they don't actually extract that much water versus farming or actually cities, but I do think a comprehensive conservation plan regarding water would be appropriate. But I don't feel good about singling out particular industries. I understand that water bottling plants were exempted in the past, 25 years ago, from the permitting procedure for several technical reasons and regarding their business, and probably for the purposes of enhancing, promoting those businesses, their existence as the lumber businesses went out, and the loss of jobs. I'm probably voting no on Measure H, to be honest.
Thank you for your question. I guess water bottling plants have had a bad history. They come into town, take the water, and don't really care much about the residences and the effect of those people. I think that's highly unfortunate. I think that our community here spoke loudly to say, please, let's develop a relationship. If you'd like to come into our town, let's develop a relationship. And I think that goes for everyone, businesses, residents, summer vacation homeowners, etc. We want to build a community here, and that means with everyone. And yes, they're in the county, but they're going to be using our city services, so we have some leverage with them. Our wastewater treatment plant can only treat so much water, so I hope that the city will use that as a negotiation to say, to limit the amount of water that can be withdrawn. I know that Crystal Geyser doesn't want a limitation, as any business model would not want a limitation on them. I think that's unfortunate. I think we need to demand a limitation. Yes, the amount of water they're taking is minimal. Very, very minimal compared to other uses in the past and compared to what agricultural needs are. But yes, that relationship's important to us, as all relationships are. So, yes, on Measure H. Thank you, Angela.
Privatization of groundwater. I have some background in this, given the written law environmental impact reports, and we looked at it. And I'm looking at this probably a little bit differently than the bottling plant in town. The way they're going to start out is what I start out with most people, because I don't think a lot of people understand that when the state was being put together, right in about 1848, right before this, when the gold rush was going on, this is one of the very first things they talked about. You just don't draw lines around the state. You have to have a water source for it, and a lot of the lines in the state are determined by my background's in geography, so I know it's kind of nonsense. That said, one of the things that's, and you can go to any of the state sites and you're going to find it, a water right is considered as sacred as a private property right. But make no mistake about it, the next sentence that falls right into behind it is the state owns the water, period. As long as you're allowed to use the state's water, as long as they find it a reasonable use. It's that broad, it's that general. And it's been in court probably since 1848, on again, off again. And we're not talking about surface waters, we're talking about groundwaters. Groundwater in this state is probably the last natural resource that is not controlled by a state and or federal government agency. I think the state is going to be coming into that. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think just standing back, as you would watch a football game or something else, that is the thing that's going to happen. I think Measure H, having written policy before, is not well written. I think it flies in the face of state law, and I think it's just going to end up in the courts. I'd like to see the state, which they will, step up and go ahead and start providing for good legislation as to how they're going to handle the private groundwater rights of people. I think it's on the agenda, and I think that's what's going to become.
Thank you. Speaking of measures, what is your position on the Siskiyou County's planned jail expansion, and how will you be voting on Measure G?
I'm going to go back to my law enforcement career. I worked at the tail end of it for an organization where we provided management to some of the largest agencies in the state. San Jose City, Sacramento County, Contra Costa County. I worked down in Long Beach. I've worked in Pasadena. Most of the major counties, we provided management to them. The gentleman that was my mentor that helped me in this management was a jail captain in Sonoma in the early 70s. What happened at that time was they did not meet federal standards. They did not increase their jail, take care of it. And a federal judge came in and literally took over the county's entire budget. They gave it to my friend and a sergeant that worked for him and said, the judge said, you just tell me how much money you need and I'll make sure you have it. You bring this jail up to federal standards. Now I know nobody likes the idea of a jail, and we have a lot of other problems, and it is complicated. I understand that. But having a wife that worked for a large company that built schools, jails, city halls, all kinds of institutional kind of things, I understand how much $27 million is. But I also understand what damage will be caused if we end up with a federal lawsuit because we don't increase our jail capacity, or we don't try to react and do something about our jail housing problems. If we just ignore it and somebody in our jail ends up with a federal lawsuit on their side of it, this county is going to be in deep trouble. That's the part that scares me about it. So I look at it from a different perspective. It's not about do we want a jail or not want a jail. Do we want the federal government to come in if we mess up? Do we want them to take over our county's budget?
Yeah, when the county pulled back funds for the library, we wanted to find a way to fund it. And so we put on the ballot, on the voting ballot, a 0.25 transaction tax. Now our library is funded and it has a healthy budget. I do not think that this is a way to fund jails. There are different funding sources for jails, and it should not be for the people at a 0.25% transaction tax to fund this construction. It sounds like to me there was some mismanagement for this jail expansion, and so this should be funded by the county and not by the people.
All right, so there's a little bit of history on what's going on with the jail, and essentially I do believe that the capacity increase is necessary. But the problem for me is the way the financing has been arranged and how it's become muddled. So I did vote no on the first vote, and while the majority of people did vote yes to have the direct tax, it fell because it didn't have 2/3. So I thought maybe that would be the end of the issue and then have to find some
It
other
actually got
finance.
less than a majority.
I thought it had 52%, didn't it?
No, 49, 40 something.
49, 49? Okay. So, last time I looked, I thought it was 52. But, I had some misgivings about the overall project. There were some details I looked to. I'm in Wairega every day, and I talked to a lot of people. I am convinced that we do need to increase capacity. So the issue for me is the way the financing is being handled. I'm doubtful to vote yes at this point due to some questions I have. I plan to talk to the sheriff directly about this, and I have to talk to some people at the auditor's office, particularly Jennifer Elberger, I think is how you pronounce her name, about some other issues, and this included. So I'll be making my decision as to how I'm voting in the next couple of weeks. I vote absentee, so I don't have a decision made, but I'm tending negative at this point. Thank you.
I'm very concerned that it started out with, it's a grant, and that we just had to match it. And then I went to the Board of Supervisors meeting, and they went, no, it's not a grant, it's a bond, and it's going to be paid for by the people, and that we need to raise money. And then it came on, and the people spoke, and we said, no, the 2/3. And then the next Board of Supervisors meeting I went to, they explained that it's a special tax, and a special tax requires a 2/3 vote. And it's not really legal to just put it in general taxes if it's a special tax. And so they were really clear that it wasn't quite legal, but they're kind of pushing it through because they want the money. And if we can't do it legal, and you know it's just wrong to just try to skate around and do things illegally, especially when it is our sheriff that's stepping forward and saying, well, we can slip it in and the people won't really notice that we're doing it illegally. So I would have to say no, just on the basis that it's not being legal.
We don't want bad guys out there, that's for sure. There are bad guys. I mean, there's a lot of people in jails who maybe don't really belong there. If they had some rehabilitation offered to them, if they had some other ways of looking at their criminal history instead of just locking them up. I think if we're going to put a new jail in there, that has to be part of it. Without that, I'm totally opposed to it. I'm quite familiar with rehabilitation. I'm quite familiar with people who have spent time in jail who came out and made pretty good lives for themselves because somebody gave them an opportunity and people cared. And without that, I don't want to do jail. I mean, I don't want felons, armed felons walking the streets, believe me. But I certainly don't want somebody who's a drug offender or an alcoholic offender who was creating crimes as a result of their addiction, not given a chance to improve their lives. Some people are constitutionally incapable of doing that. I understand that. But a lot of them have not been given the opportunity. And we as a society owe that to them. We owe that to our citizens. So without that, I'm totally opposed to it.
Thank you. Okay. What do you think are our biggest obstacles to economic revitalization? What do you think is the best direction for economic development in our region?
There's about 1,000 different proposals from 1,000 different people that I've heard. We survive on sales tax. That's what we survive on here. We have the landing, but we have no infrastructure. There's still some cleanup to do. We have the north part of town, but we don't have the infrastructure to build there. How are we going to increase our tax revenue is do we bring a box store in? A little Walmart? I don't think so. I want to keep Mount Shasta. But I'm certainly not opposed to clean, environmentally friendly types of jobs that are high paying, that are clean, that will create a revenue source to help our infrastructure, our kids, just the environment of Mount Shasta. We're in really bad shape. Our sewer lines are falling apart. The water lines are old. In a few years, we're going to have a lot of problems here. Clay pipes for sewers suck up water. We have twice as much water probably going into the sewer pond as we need because we have outdated, old piping. So I'm all for clean, environmentally friendly businesses coming to town. I'm 100%. We need modern communications coming into town, which we don't have, fiber optic cables. We're in the 21st century. I'm an old guy who doesn't know how to do a lot of that stuff, but I know that that's the future. I know that for our youngsters, we have to create something for our young people.
Thank you.
Yes, we do have the fiber optic coming right up here with the highway, and that we could tap into it. We got to deal with our infrastructure to really build anything on top of it. I think it was quite a shame when we lost our elder care facility. One, we're tourism, we're a retirement community, and to really serve the people that we have here, that we have been drawing up here for the last 60 years, and giving them quality retirement homes would be an avenue to look at. How can we reopen elder care facilities? We got the College of the Siskiyous, and they train our nurses, and so we have our local kids getting local training, and then they could have well-paying local jobs and not something that they have to go and subsidize with food stamps. We have to keep looking at what's coming in with the landing. And our TOT has really been going through the roof. It's really impressive, but 49% it has been increasing over the last few months, and that we can have more events and have more draw for our tourism industry.
So I believe the question was a regional one? Yeah, so the county itself, I see as I travel throughout the whole area, Irving and so forth, I do see growth in certain other cities, not so much Mount Shasta. Felipe Road in Wairika has some industrial growth, and on Main Street they have retail-oriented growth. And then you can see what's happening in Weed, particularly South Weed. I don't think all of that makes sense for Mount Shasta. The industrial growth, I don't think is particularly attractive for this town. I think big box and other sorts of retail is not particularly favored here either, and I would agree with that. So what can we do in Mount Shasta to catch up with the rest of the county? We do need to add infrastructure, as has already been discussed, in a northerly direction and in the southerly direction. There are some mechanisms being used in Weed and in the future in Wairika to actually pay for that infrastructure without going to the people per se. The actual increases in tax revenues will pay for the bonds needed to build the infrastructure, which is mainly sewers and water pipes. The proposed or possible fiber optic cabling that would come in would help to attract clean-oriented research and development and other potential tech-oriented businesses, along with helping out the rest of the existing entities in this city. So I think the key is infrastructure improvements, and then with the assistance of the Economic Development Council, having some guidance from us as a council as to what we prefer here. We can stay away from controversial businesses coming in and hopefully add jobs in a very congenial way.
I really love the Grow Club, and I'm sorry that it had to fold, but I think part of it is we get volunteer burnout. So I'd like to see us get our heads together and see if we can create a co-op where we can continue to harvest produce from our local farms, stimulate local economy, and create a model for ourselves that works. Because I love going to a store where it's on the honor system, you're supporting local farmers, you're eating fresh picked food, healthy citizens, creating healthy citizens. Yes, we're growing in the senior population, so certainly we can look at services for seniors. We're growing in the wealth population. They're attracted here, so certainly special products that the wealth are attracted to. When we had the emergency in 2011, we used the Roseburg property to create a huge community compost pile for all the debris. We ended up chipping that and selling that, making a profit. So we're rich in natural resources as far as timber. So if we can keep the forest managed and use what we extract from the forest to make a profit, there's also a possibility of business there. Clean businesses, businesses that work, money that circulates within the economy. That's what I support. And profit.
Okay, as I understand it, this is a regional question, but I'm running for a local city office, and in fact, my answer will go ahead and fit. I would assure the communities of Weed, McLeod, and Dunsmuir, as well as Mount Shasta. Economic development, I look at it and I can say, yeah, we need this, we need that sort of situation. I think one of the first things we need is a different, or a little bit of a change in a mindset. The mindset, I'm going to go ahead and use an analogy that I've been talking to people about: diversity, diversification. Think of the town in the way, let me step back just a second here. All the old normal things that we used to acquire our tax bases from, timber revenues from the sale of federal timber, the mills that were here, large companies that it's gone. I don't know if it's coming back. I can't look at a crystal ball that close. But what I know what we need to do is, or one of the things we should consider, again, is diversification. Treat it as you would a stock portfolio. Treat it as you would your 401k or your IRA. If you have one stock in it, you are vulnerable no matter how well it does. I don't care if it's Berkshire Hathaway A stock. You are vulnerable to a market flop and you could get hurt badly. If it is diversified, as most good portfolio managers will tell you, you have mutual funds, you have exchange traded funds, you have a variety of different instruments in there that cover different things. You can usually handle something. We need to start looking at little businesses that are coming to town, and if they're successful, we need to embrace them. We need to embrace the tourists that are coming here, as well as anybody else that might be interested in bringing their corporations or their companies here.
Okay, so the landing was brought up a lot recently, so I'll just, this question is, speaking of the landing, how can we ensure that this property serves the community and is not taken over by corporate interests?
Julia Lucchesi is our new city planner. Okay, she just finished up a review, and I think 2 city planning meetings ago she gave a very good report on it, where they were looking at the plan that we have for it currently, which is approximately 10 years old since it did it, and John has it in his hands right now. Basically, it's showing what we can do with that property, and it is quite diversified. The thing that we were looking at the time when Juliana was looking at this was, do we need to go back and redefine what we want to do with it? And she came up with the conclusion, no, we don't. And the reason she did that is because it is quite diversified. We have not really tried to do anything with it as it is, and it's going to cost the city a lot of money to go back through CEQA and change the zoning on this. And instead of going back and reinventing the wheel, we really ought to try and see if the wheel's going to work for us first. So, and then the big thing, as everybody's mentioned, it's missing infrastructure. Knowing something about development that goes on in large areas, and I can point to some other communities that have done it, that have infrastructure in them. Simply because you have infrastructure does not mean you're going to have the people coming on in. It's a big, complicated question. And we're going to address it. I think we need to address it, but again, we have to keep it very, very much an open mind.
I'm getting a hit for community buy-in. I think anytime you do a development, why not involve your citizens and get them in the room and say, what do you want to see happen? I think I heard the plan that we want to develop it as a complete property. We don't want to start sectioning it and selling off bit by bit, because then the first developer will come in and get the most valuable property, and then the pickings will be worse as time goes on. So I think ideally we would have one developer come in, work closely with the community, get community buy-in, agree that this is the direction we want to go, work closely, again, develop those relationships with those companies that want to come in and develop in our town. So I think that answers your question.
All right, so there's 127 acres there approximately. I'm not sure, but a sizable portion is dedicated to reserve, natural reserve, and parkland. And then the other remaining area to be developed is divided into approximately 5 different types of permitted uses. And they vary from light industrial, which is by the railroad tracks, to commercial office buildings, to recreational for-profit enterprises, and so forth. There's discussion about whether to have a single developer help to promote the development of the land in its different permitted uses, either by selling it entirely or setting up a land lease so the city would have revenues going forward. None of this is really possible until infrastructure is developed. And again, it could be done with a financing district, or maybe the developer could be hired to do that in exchange for a more profitable relationship for them. I tend to go favor retaining ownership of the property for the city and therefore potential revenue. However, much that might be as a help for the city going forward. I think the essence of the question is how do we attract businesses that the whole community can get behind in a favorable manner and that are not controversial. One possible thing would be to set up a requirement that every business that does come into the area is LEED certified, and maybe a certain level. Crystal Geyser, for instance, claims that they are certified at silver. That means that the waste coming out is not very substantive. There's recycling going on, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe you need a gold level for Mount Shasta. might be one way to make the businesses coming in meet our standard.
I understand that when Mount Shasta annexed that area into the city, that we struck a deal with the county that they get half of the property tax revenue. They get half of the TOT tax. And so far, they haven't invested any money in the infrastructure of that property. So it seems that approaching the county and saying, well, if you're going to benefit half from this property, shouldn't you invest half? So I think that needs to be looked at. I'm a little concerned that there's light industrial, and currently, not that it's going to happen, but just to make sure, water bottling companies would be exempt from any kind of permitting in that area. I think in our own regulations for the city that should be struck, that they should have to get a permit to extract water and to show how much they're extracting. It's not saying you can't do it, but there's a permit process and they have to disclose how much water they're actually taking. And yes, we need to have input from the very beginning, from the public, and not, as Tim does, set it all up and then show us what they've done for us. I think the public should be included from the very beginning.
I agree 100% with Rosalind on the county. I think they have some responsibility here. I don't understand why we don't bring that subject up. You want some money, you better put some in. And I think we have an incredible investment opportunity there for every facet of our community. I mean, we have something there that everybody could use. We have something there that I think could be marvelous. We have sawmill to music. We could have a little Brit there. You know, there's all sorts of different possibilities. And I think that we need input from the artist community, the New Age community, the old loggers community, the people who've been here forever. I think we all need to get together and come up with a plan, you know? If we do, it's been mentioned, if we do change the zoning, there's a CEQA, EIR, it's going to be expensive. So we need to look at it and see if we can live with it in the condition that it's in. So I was on the original committee when Roseburg gave the property away. And the thing I said first was we need to do an environmental assessment of this. And that was like 20-something years ago. And I said, after 6 months of saying that and them saying that they wanted a shopping center in there, I left. Because I knew it would never happen anyway, because they have to do an environmental assessment first. There's certain types of, you have to go from point A to point C, and you have to do it, you know, like infrastructure. Then we need to have committees to look and see what we want to do. So I guess the time's up. So.
Okay. So most of you mentioned this, that we are all aware that the resource extraction industry has been dying for years. What sectors do you think have the most promise and opportunity to replace them in our area?
Well, when I first moved here, you could sit on Mount Shasta Boulevard and all you saw were logging trucks. You know, it's all you saw. There was sawmills like crazy here. Well, that all died. And you know, what do we have here that we can do? We have fiber optic possibly coming. There's all sorts of neat little companies around that make all sorts of incredible gadgets. There's all sorts of companies and young people out there who want to make backpacks, who want to make canoes, You know, we could just try to put some more advertisement out there, which we have not done yet. I think we need to spend, as a city, I think we need to spend much more money on advertising ourselves and the potential that we have. And we haven't done that. The Chamber of Commerce, they give them very little money. Our tax base right now is on TOT taxes and people coming in to visit Mount Shasta. That's where we're making our money. And why don't we spend more money on that? It doesn't make sense to me. You know, it doesn't make sense that we're not trying to create an atmosphere of creative businesses coming into Mount Shasta. You know, I just think that that's what we need to do. We have so many creative people in this town, you know. I look out here and I see people that I know, and I mean, you guys, you've got great ideas, and we need to take advantage of those.
I think we should have a sliding scale for business license. That we have new entrepreneurs who are coming up, and we need to mentor our entrepreneurs. And right now we have a set amount that for some new entrepreneurs makes it impossible for them to start playing the game. And our rentals of our spaces for the 4th of July is far higher than other communities around here. McLeod, they have 8 events, and I understand their space rental is like $30, and in Mount Shasta it's $300. And I think that we have tried to make too many pennies in these situations, and that we could have events where we could have local people presenting their wares. But you have to make it affordable. And so what this last 4th of July, I saw a booth, an empty spot, a booth, and there was fewer vendors. And so to be cultivating to our business community, our entrepreneurs, and to start out early with our children, and to have an entrepreneur classes for our children. Time's up.
Still have 30 seconds. That was my 30 seconds.
So can you repeat the question quickly?
The question is, the resource extraction industry has been dying for many years. What sectors do you think have the most promise to replace them?
And so in the Mount Shasta area, if it is assumed that to the north, Spring Hill, and to the south, the landing, will be the areas where most economic development occurs of substance. I think 4 main possibilities. One, obviously, would be increases in tourism facilities of different sorts, convention centers, possibly, probably more like 1, but more hotels, and then recreational facilities, which will bring more people into the area and promote economic activity. The other ones would be light industry, light manufacturing, possibly transportation development, and then tech, or, I'll just say tech, research and development. So all of these could be very clean, LEED certified businesses that add high quality jobs, certainly above minimum wage, with the possible exception of some of the tourism businesses. And assuming that some of these people actually stay and shop, the general retail environment too should improve. So I think those would be the 4 main areas. I don't really think there'll be many more bottling plants, and if any. And I don't really see much happening with the lumber industry based on what I talk to people about all over the county. So thank you.
Yes, I do see the tech sector. What we've seen happen over the past decade or so is that the middle class has been gutted through the advances in technology. As this progresses, as machines begin to take over other jobs, such as self-driving trucks, the truck industry is going to go away, self-driving taxis, taxi drivers going away. As we begin, our jobs are replaced by machines. I'm talking well into the future, obviously. We're going to have to decide what to do with all our time. I think that, I think crafting is a good idea. We have many crafters here, so that's certainly a sector, the art sector, creativity. Jobs right now are in the tech sector, so if you can learn coding, there are schools to learn coding, you can get a high-paying job very quickly, within a few months, if you're talented in that area. There are very few people that are. Developing an application for a computer. There are, I think, 1.5 million Androids that are turned on every day. You know, the numbers are phenomenal as far as where people are putting their time and energy. Service sector, taking care of our seniors. As our senior populations continues to grow, which it is in this town, we want to service those seniors, and so that's also a sector. And then we also want to put our heads together and think about what services we're going to have for our youth. What's going to attract youth to stay here? And that needs some serious consideration, because whatever ideas I have in my mind from my childhood experience doesn't apply to the young today. So we need to keep that connection healthy and vital so we can understand what is a good direction for our town to attract the youth to come here.
So I'm sitting around having lunch with a bunch of my buddies, and we're trying to figure out how come I moved to Mount Shasta. I basically said it was my wife's decision for sure, but I grew up here as a little kid, formative years spent on the side of that mountain. And that was my answer. And then one of my friends in the group was an owner of a very, very large hotel company. At one point, you couldn't drive for 2.5 days. You couldn't drive 30 miles without running into one of their hotels. So we asked Bert, how come you never put a hotel in Mount Shasta? And he said, tell me why I want to pull off the road. A simple question, but it's tough. It's really tough. And so you look at it and you say, well, let's concentrate on answering that question. And I think the city really needs to sit back and look and really put down on a laundry list, a serious laundry list, of why people want to stop here and visit. The natural resource we're looking at, the only one that we have left, is that beautiful mountain out there. Now, whether somebody stops for spiritual reasons, somebody stops because they love hiking outdoors, whatever, that is the draw. What we got to figure out is how we are going to use that draw to help our small community. And I'm back down to the city level. So one of the things that we have to answer and come to that. One of the things I had planned, coming from Reading, thank you, which I always got a kick out of, was we need to have a sign right down in the middle of Reading. And all it is a big white billboard, and it says, it's 105 degrees outside. Shouldn't you be in Mount Shasta?
Okay, that's great. So still on the business train here, how do you feel about, so I know you're all on board, we know you're all on board with fiber optic, but also business conference and co-working centers is a possible way to develop economically. Also, a business incubator for small business startups.
Those are great buzzwords, and they're you know, I love buzzwords, and I love buzz phrases and things like that.
Don't we all?
Again, let's go back to, tell me why you can get, how you can get somebody that's an incubator type corporation to come up here, pull off the road, build what he wants, or somebody else is going to build it for him, and then he's going to go ahead and supply it until the thing is paid off. Okay? This stuff is not cheap. Everybody thinks the jail's expensive. Start looking at what some of these corporations have to do to put some large things in, such as hotels and whatever. Okay? So when somebody looks at something like that, I like the idea of it because somebody's thinking outside of the box and they're trying to think ahead and they're trying to think into the future. Now, come back down to earth for a minute. Put your feet back down on the ground and answer my question. Why do you want to pull over?
As far as a convention center, business conference.
Could you go back with the microphone? You're getting all the feedback.
You're getting feedback, so here's fine?
That sounds good.
Okay.
How is it, people?
Thank you.
All right, there we go. Sorry about that.
We already have a fair amount of conferences and meetings that happen here. I go to Castle Lake and I see a group of women and they're in the middle of a conference and this area attracts already a fair number of groups that come here and celebrate this area and do their personal growth and other growth, business growth here. So that's already happening. And do they need a special facility? Maybe. I don't know. It's a matter of putting a survey out. You know, what else do they need when they come here? Are they getting what they need? As far as incubator space, I love what the high school's doing with the 3D printer. There's someone over there very enthusiastic about getting their youth involved immediately with these creative uses of technology. Now, I understand the program at the high school pretty much ends as soon as they graduate, so how can we as a community continue to support their interest in developing those skills? Is it something we can do that hooks up the high school to COS, or is it something that the library can do in their expansion to create these creator spaces, to have that creative, energetic space for them to gather and think of interesting ideas to input their efforts and create interesting projects.
So with respect to convention center space, right now we have this building, we have rooms at the resort, rooms at Best Western, and they're fairly busy across the board. Would extra capacity, increased capacity be unnecessary or necessary? I think it's an issue of marketing. If a structure was to be built somewhere in this town, whether it's the Landing or other place, to fill that time, that space with events is going to require a major marketing effort. So I wouldn't be in favor of promoting that unless there was a concomitant effort to promote the use of the facility, and that is somewhat more tricky. So in favor if there's going to be increased marketing, not so in favor if we're not going to try and fill that place up. With respect to the incubator, I know universities have these facilities. The place I went to does. I know some businesses in the Bay Area have started up such things. I think it's a great idea. How it would happen here, I'm really unsure. Again, it sounds a bit like a marketing effort. How to convince an organization or a university to come up here and set up a business idea or entrepreneurial incubator is, to me, a marketing question. We have to make certain promises with respect to facilities and infrastructure. Assuming we can do that, it might be something that works, and it would be an interesting venture, I think. But I'm unsure about what the feasibility of it and how attractive it would be to outside entities.
One of the things that brought up of why would you get off the freeway? And when we look at our off-ramps, I think we could do a lot better at either end. Because you come in and you go, is there really anything here? And so I think part of the marketing would to be looking at how can we make it more inviting when you get off the freeways. Why would you want to come to this community when it looks like a big empty dirt field? And coming the other direction, that I don't know if it's really going to be coming through, that the first thing people will see is perhaps a car wash. I think it's questioning, what kind of face do we want to put out there? And we need to work at making a good plan for that marketing. The Siskiyou Economic Development has now put another fee on our hotels to do more marketing. So that's going on. We have the TOT money coming in, and that's supposed to be used for marketing, as I understand. And I think using the library and the funding that we've been putting into our local library for an incubator place and to use the technology. We already have high speed there, at the library, so I think it would be a good place to start the flowers growing.
Lots of good ideas. Then we have reality. I guess you have to have the idea first. And I don't know what the answers are, but, and I haven't been going out searching for them, to be honest with you, but as a council person, that would be my job. There's lots of people out here in this town that have wonderful ideas on how we can get this done and how we can start incubator. I've got sons who work for small companies, and we have all sorts of connections, all of us, of how to get this information. I don't have it right now. I don't know. I'm just talking off the top of my head. But I would certainly be willing to invest a lot of time in researching that myself, because I think that's another part of the plan of Mount Shasta. Convention center, be great, but who's going to build it? Do we want that person to build it? What's it going to look like? Where's it going to be? Do we have the infrastructure to support it? It'd be wonderful to have 2,000 seat auditorium to bring people in. Can we fill it? Maybe, Maybe people don't come here because we don't have a big convention center. If we had one, would they come? I don't know. There'd have to be some sort of a study. I don't know. The resort is awfully small. This building is awfully small. It's not real inviting. Nor is the resort. I mean, it's like a dungeon down there. So I would love to see a really nice auditorium somewhere.
All right, I have a few questions here about water pollution in the area, so I'm just going to read them all to you, and you can respond to them, I'm going to lump them together because they're all about water pollution. So we have, the City Park Springs has lead, arsenic, and aluminum in it. Should this water remain available to the public? Do you think that the warning signs we have are sufficient? Natural springs on Chestnut Street have lead content. What would you propose to do about the pollution? Does the pollution from the Dannon factory and potential from Crystal Geyser concern you? And how do you propose to handle the industrial pollution documented under the old Roseburg site? Please let me know if you need to be reminded of any of that, because that's a lot of stuff. But water pollution in our area is huge. Is a concern, anyway.
Sure it is. I don't have firsthand knowledge of the pollution. To be honest with you, I don't. I want clean water. As a city, we need to monitor it if that's the problem. And where's it coming from? Is it coming from Dannon? I don't know. Is it coming from natural resources? I don't know. I haven't seen enough studies to be convinced exactly where it's coming from. But is it a natural occurrence? Is it? I don't know. As we probably should, if that's the case, do a little more research on it. I'm certainly not a chemist. I'm not a hydrologist. I'm just a guy who's running for city council, who wants to listen and try to soak up as much information as I can. A lot of this stuff is new to me, and I'm not going to lie. I don't know a lot about water pollution in Mount Shasta. Should I? Yeah, probably should. As a city council person, will I? Oh yeah. I'm going to hear about it at every meeting, and I will research it. I'll research it myself through different sources. I believe that that's what we have to do as council people. So.
Part of the reason why we have to upgrade our wastewater treatment plant is because of the heavy metals. And it's really interesting to look at the graphs and that the heavy metals shoot straight up when we have rains. And I keep asking Ron and others, well, where is it coming from? And they keep saying they don't know. And it's like, well, shouldn't we know? Okay, we're going to build a plant to handle the heavy metals, and the heavy metals only go up when we have heavy rains. Shouldn't we know where the heavy metals are coming from? Is it that our storm drains are dumping into our sewer plant, which they say that they don't? Or we have broken pipes, and so that's where the infiltration is coming from? Don't know. The wastewater treatment plant was built on an old dump site. Is it bubbling up? We don't know. So, yes, I think that we should be doing testing and finding out where the pollutants are coming from. And it was recommended years ago by individuals. And the city council member said, no, we don't want to test, because if we test, then we will have to clean it up. Well, I don't think that we should close our eyes and say that we don't want the responsibility to clean it up. The Roseburg property, we've had 3 studies that Siskiyou Economic Development writes grants to do more studies on the pollutants. There's some point that we need to stop doing the studies and do something about it. I've been really impressed with mushrooms. Is there a way to utilize our local knowledge, our local people, than to go out and outsource it to Pace Engineering or some other location people?
Thank you.
All right, I'll try to cover the using water. So I think the first one had to do with the city park spring water, and I do believe there are signs there, and I do know that it's under discussion with the Red District Board as to improving the signage with appropriate warnings. And I do believe testing will go on, and obviously, if people are taking water to drink, they need to know that they're drinking possibly dangerous water. So number 2 had to do with Chestnut, and there's 2 small, well, there's one spring by Castle, mostly covered, and then there's one over here by Mountain View, I assume. If the lead that is in the water, assuming that there actually is lead, is a source that can be cleaned up, I just think that it should be cleaned up. If it's not, if it's naturally occurring, that would be a bit of a more difficult situation. Signage might be appropriate, but is anybody really drinking water from those sources? I don't know. I never see anybody doing that, but again, might be appropriate. The third one had to do with
Dan and the potential for
yeah, so the hope is that the plan for spending upwards of $19 million on a new sewage treatment plant is to handle the heavy metals. That seems to be the big improvement. And I'm optimistic that whether it's from the Crystal Geyser plant or heavy metals coming in from the storm drains, which are basically runoff from car wastes on the road, that these will be intercepted and removed, and the water being put into the Sacramento or up to the golf course is as clean as it could possibly be. And that is the reason for spending upwards of $19 million. So that is, I'm bullish on that particular investment. The other issue is the problems with the landing or yeah. So there was dioxin found there. I think that is the next major cleanup effort. As to the level of perfection of the cleanup of the brownfield hazardous material areas, I've been told that it's been very thorough and is nearing completion. Further testing would be appropriate, but I do think the site should be cleaned thoroughly.
Thank you.
Yeah, as far as the Roseburg property, I understand it's split into all these different 7 zones because they were able to do a substantial amount of cleanup in some areas, while some areas still stayed a bit dirty. So I think that's why they're planning to do cement pours over the areas that they're not able to clean up, so that people aren't walking on them. As far as the amount of lead, I'd like to see a backup test to confirm the levels. I think that one person's testing is not enough. Certainly we need to get a second opinion to make sure that those measurements that were made are correct. As far as the water being clean, yes, I think that the water coming out of the headwaters of the city park is the first, its first sign of daylight. I understand. So how could it be polluted at that point? I don't understand how we're getting water off the mountain at first daylight and it's getting polluted. I don't agree with the signs that are up that saying that the water's polluted. I love that the community loves this source of water and they make it as a ritual for themselves to go and visit the headwaters. It's a sacred site and should be treated as such. I don't agree with all the signs that say dangerous, dangerous, because I think it takes away from the ambiance. As far as water pollution in general, I understand that as far as what's coming to the sewer system is a lot of pharmaceuticals. I understand that's a heavy pollutant in our waters and difficult to deal with. So as our senior population increases, that's going to increase as well. I imagine so. As far as everyday, we have water running through our town, so just being aware of where trash is going, trash overflowing from bins, running into our water. That's a more of a visual. I'd love to see us take better care of our surface water stream, make it a beautiful and cared for water stream for everyone.
We start with the Roseburg property first, and if I'm working off of limited memory on this, I believe we're at the tail end. It's under a federal cleanup at this point, and has been. And essentially what we have, we're at the tail end of phase 2 of this process. It's a 3-phase, 3-stage process. Last stage is the worst of it all. There's areas where they're going to have to dig down 8 feet. There's areas where they're going to have to dig down 6 feet. Remove the soil, replace it with light native soil or something similar to. That's why all the piles of dirt that you see down there, that kind of situation. That soil, those soils that are polluted at that point, are then moved off to a Class 2 waste fill site. Closest one I know is one that I worked on in an EIR outside of Corning, and what they do is they treat the soils down there at that point. Now, that's what's going on down at the Roseburg site. Now, as far as the spring goes, I look at it, and if we have a pollution problem, the part that I'm a little concerned with, or I really don't, I have more questions about pollution coming out of the city spring than anything else. And the first one is, where's regional water quality control? Those guys are Johnny on the spot whenever there's a problem with anything that has anything to do with surface waters, or in this case, that spring is their jurisdiction, period. If there's a problem with it, how come nobody's gone to them and talked to them? Okay, you can go and talk to Rod Bryant, and that's great. And I would be very surprised if Rod didn't contact them if somebody said there was a pollution problem coming out of there. Those guys actually have a major meeting twice a year up in Montague where they come together, regional quality control board groups, and they talk about different things. Okay, so if we have this major problem, I'm finding it hard to believe that the state is just turning their back on it. I don't believe in conspiracy theories. You know, I believe if there's a problem, turn it over to the proper authorities. And they are the proper authority. Move on from there.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so generally, cannabis is a big issue in our area. What are your feelings on legalization and supporting growers or not supporting growers in our area?
You're going to love this. Last thing I did as a federal officer was I was a specialist for the U.S. Park Service. I was a tracker. Not only did I track problem animals, but I also tracked dope growers. And I was tasked with actually catching, my partner and I, with catching people in the garden. We were not allowed to let them just run away. We were called to different parks, they would bring us in, we'd go ahead, we would set up, monitor, catch them in there, bring them on out. So I'm somebody that hunted dope growers. And I remember going in, I'm not a big intimidating guy, my partner was the same way. We'd go in, we'd grab them, usually, and there's usually a larger team at that time of people going in, and we were not exactly your typical law enforcement guys. We weren't going in waving guns and yelling and screaming. I would usually grab one of the dope growers, bring him down, basically have him sit down, and I'd whisper in his ear, "Hey, this is a beautiful garden, I like it." And you've really done a lot of work. Well, thanks a lot. They said, well, stay with me. I'm going to keep you handcuffed to make sure you don't get hurt. He said, hey, thanks, I really appreciate it. And you see what happens to these guys once they go off into the criminal system because you go to court. Usually they got about 6 months, usually at a county facility working out because they're hard workers, that kind of situation. So in working very close in the dope industry, as I did at that point, I look at it and I'm watching now as it's being legalized. And I'm getting a kick out of it. Because, I'm sorry, but I'm seeing marijuana in a different light. I'm not seeing it as this big, bad, ugly that was going on when I was hunting dope. And we had the largest, my park that I was in, we had the largest dope bust in the United States at that time, in the contiguous United States. That said, I think we need to start looking at it in a different light. And I think that is what is going on today. I'm not talking about narco-terrorism. That's not what I'm talking about. The cartels that are coming up, where we have ICE hunting those people as well as the other federal agents I have, yes, that is something you still have to go out and about for. But as far as the rest of it goes, I think we ought to really have taken a hard look at this and not make it as criminal as it is.
I don't believe that marijuana is a gateway drug, as some may suppose. I equate it sort of like drinking a nice glass of wine. It can be relaxant, it can be a stimulant. How is it different than the other drugs that we're addicted to? Caffeine, sugar, nicotine. It's a drug. They're all drugs. We're all addicted. So why point the finger at only one type of drug? Why have, I agree with Bernie Sanders, why have it on the, what's it called?
Schedule 1.
Schedule 1. Schedule A. Schedule 1, Schedule A. Why have it grouped in with some of the worst drugs that we have floating around our society? Heroin, cocaine, opium. It's a plant. It's a beautiful plant. And honor the plant system for its uses, for its medicinal uses. How many plants have we destroyed through our destruction of the forests, destruction of jungles, all these beautiful medicinal plants that serve us, keep us healthy. That's it.
So the question is to my feelings about legalization.
It's on the ballot in November, and so
The state ballot.
the state ballot, and it could become legal
And we
statewide.
probably will pass. Well, being addicted to glucose and caffeine, of which I might be able to take care of the caffeine, but the glucose is never going away. The issue is, I guess, a matter of degree. I think that drug legalization is more of a national issue in that, and this is something that's going on right now. There are marijuana plantations, for lack of a better term, that are being closed by the sheriff right now because they're actually, the product is being exported. So it's a national issue in that regard, I guess. I guess my feeling is that as a nation we need to have a full discussion as to what should be legalized for recreational use, medicinal use, and what should be outlawed, because it's just too hard to maintain controls that don't lead to maintain controls that prevent addiction. So I don't necessarily have a problem with the legalization issue coming up here in the state of California, but I would like the nation to figure this one out because it is leading to very, very high costs, both in personal terms and in monetary terms.
for Mount Shasta, we need to look at our regulations. It was brought before City Council and the Planning Commission, and it was proposed to ban it all. And everyone said, no, that's not the way this town is going to be happy with. And so we really need to look at our regulations of delivery. And for some individuals with medical needs, it's very difficult for them to go and out of their homes. My mother, for example, she had a hip replacement, and it was one thing that really eased her pain. And in Colorado, she could have it delivered. And so we need to look at our regulations. We don't need everyone's backyard full of skunk, but I think we need to be good neighbors. And we have the 2/12/24, and I think it's a direction. It depends on how much property you have, of how much marijuana you can grow. I really hate to see this whole county being taken over by huge grow operations. We'd have jobs, wouldn't we? But I think we could do better than that. We have to look at our water usage, good, bad. It's really something that we need to come together and discuss, and not just have some people make decisions for everybody, but have the whole community, the Green Thumb people. They were very willing to step forward and share what they thought was good, and we can all compromise and be good neighbors.
I've never inhaled, so. No, I don't smoke. I don't smoke pot. I'm sure friends of mine smoke pot, but I'm not around it. So, it's going to be legalized. I don't think there's any way we can get around that or fight it, or what, if you're for it or against it. It's probably going to happen. My problem is where it's grown. I certainly don't think it should be grown on residential property. I think people, if they want medicinal marijuana, should be allowed to grow a couple plants on their property. I don't have a problem with that. It doesn't smell so bad, or two of them. But when you go out to Mount Shasta Forest and you look at the groves out there, I think it's appalling. I really do. That land was made for recreational purposes. It's zoned RA, which is residential agricultural, but not to grow a whole bunch of pot. I think they're out there dumping fertilizer, stealing water. You ought to hear the stuff that people from Mount Shasta Forest and out off of 97 tell me about their properties. It's crazy. It's insane. If we're going to grow pot, grow it on ag property. I think the county ought to do something about that. But I'm in real estate. I could have made a lot of money selling a lot of land to pot growers, but I refused. I refused to do it. I won't represent them. And it's not that I'm against marijuana. I'm against taking a nice little piece of land that people used for years and years to come up and throw a tent on and go camping, and now they got a pot farm here and a pot farm here. Was not the intended use. So, that's my feelings about it. And I don't think that those are going to change. I think they belong, that pot growing belongs in ag property, and for medicinal purposes, I think people ought to be able to grow a couple plants on their own property, and it'd be okay with it. But
Thank you.
it is 7 o'clock.
Paul has to go coach a girls' basketball team. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah. Thank you all for putting this on. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, we'll just get a few more questions in. Would you be in favor of water feed breaks to those who have vegetable gardens?
Say that again.
Would you be in favor of giving feed breaks to those who have vegetable gardens in town, since people in the city limits are starting to get meters on their water?
I really believe believe that we need to have conversations of how we're going to structure our water charges. That we need to look at our low-income population. We can't have water being a burden for them to purchase. Yes, I really think that being a gardener, being low income, should earn you some points, or I don't know. It's a huge conversation that I think the entire community should be involved in. Just having the numbers saying, well, this is how much it's going to cost, and so this is how much a drop of water is such a narrow vision, that we have low income, we have gardeners, and then further up we have people that use a tremendous amount of water. Our spring produces X amount of water, and dividing that up among the community should cost a certain amount. But again, it really needs to be a conversation of the entire community, and not just a few bean counters saying, well, if you want to live here any longer, then you're going to have to kick down X amount of money, because we have to consider more than just that part of it.
So there's a rate study going on, you may have heard of this, that will probably lead to a general fee increase for utilities coming from the city. I've been warned that it may lead to some severe sticker shock. It won't be as bad as what they're dealing with in Dunsmuir, but it could be double what you're paying now. And the reason that this has to happen is because we have to improve the infrastructure of the city, because it's been delayed or deferred for too long. To answer your question more directly, I don't necessarily think there should be any discount for gardening versus possible assistance for low-income people. So if the city were to set up an eligibility scale based on income, provable income, and a need for discount on the utility fee, I would definitely think that would be a good idea.
Certainly, I think a rate increase will affect the low-income people the most. As far as gardens, let's get smart about gardens. I mean, in Africa, they build drought-resistant gardens by building them on hillsides, giving them compact design. There's also hugelkultur, where you plant the tree log to provide that garden with nourishment over a 50-year time frame. There are ways to get smart about garden design so that you can use less water. Now, I'm a bit radical, so I would like to use my shower and bath water to go into my garden, because all it has is organic soap in it and a few skin flakes. So I think the garden would enjoy that water, and that's a waste of water. Now, some people might argue, well, you need all that water for the sewer plant to operate well. So that all needs to be thought through, obviously, but I would like to see smarter solutions going forward.
The rate study. October 2016 should be the end of the rate study. As the monitoring portion of it goes, I believe they're probably going to have and start talking about this, I believe around March of 2017, hopefully around April of 2017, they'll be talking about what kind of rates and things that we're going to have. One of the things they're trying to do, obviously, is bring it up to the 21st century with the idea that, yeah, John was right. We haven't been doing any infrastructure improvements for our water system, and now we have to. The first trick on this is to put the water meters in. And with the water meters comes some rules. And with the grant, whenever you get a grant, there's going to be some rules attached to it. One of the rules is you're going to go ahead and bring it on up, show us how you're going to be paying for certain things. The rate increase I think that they're looking at right now is probably going to be the 33 dollar a month range, something along those lines for the flat fee to go ahead and take care of the rate structure for the improvements. And then, I'm not sure if it's like $2 a thousand, something along that, as to how many gallons you use in a month. What they're looking at is to try and get this probably someplace between $36 or $38 a month to $41 a month for a nice little clean reason. You are then available for federal grants if your water rates are that high. We're going to be roughly, I want to say, when my water rates in Reading and where Reading's water rates are now, and they have a very, very sophisticated infrastructure down there, we're probably going to be someplace between maybe 10-15% higher, maybe 20% higher to start with. But they're bringing us up to date with how water is going to be doing. I don't have time to answer the agricultural question part of it. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Okay. Are you interested in expanding the city limits to include areas that are not currently being served well by the county?
I want to conquer the world, yes. I want, and I made this clear, for the trials and tribulations we've gone through with the bottling plant, I want that bottling plant inside the city. I want those tax dollars. The people on the outside of the city that are close to the bottling plant, that might be or may not be receiving services, that feel like they're impacted by the bottling plant, I want to open my arms, embrace them, I want to bring them in. Absolutely. I believe in, and we talk about the key thing on the landing. They talk about, and this came about at the time, I was around at the time that was taking place, the actual transition was taking place to it. Yeah, you cannot go into any kind of an annexation without going to an organization called LAFCO, Local Legacy Formation Commission. And what they do is they are the middlemen that basically come to the table and sit down between the city and county and form a tax exchange agreement. And we made reference to that on the landing, but this also will need to happen for all the rest of the properties. County doesn't want to give up a tax base. The 32 acres to the south called the Orchard area, only 29 acres of it is just, you cannot develop it. It backs up to our old family house. The 5 acres that is developable on it can be developed, but the bottom line is that property, even though it belongs to the city pays out $1,000 a year to the county in property taxes on that 32 acres. Most people don't realize the city still has to do that. That's why it should come on in. That's why that area should come on into it. It's more complicated than that, but that's the simple answer. So yeah, as far as annexation goes, anybody who wants to be a member of our city, I think ought to be a member of our city.
Yes, I believe that when the bottling plant was empty, the city did try to annex it into the inventory. But I believe there was a $13,000 cost at the time they weren't willing to pay, so we have to balance that out. I think it was maybe something we had missed. We could have annexed that bottling plant into the city, and then all these negotiations would have been much more clean. So I agree with John Adamson there. Orchard property, we can annex that in. I guess you have to read the reports and weigh all the pluses and minuses if you want to annex a property to the city or not. So that's just a matter of doing your research before the decision comes before you.
So the essence of this question is regarding annexation, and there's the whole the whole Old Stage corridor. I don't have any strong feelings about annexing any of those parts. But the one area I foresee probably being annexed and probably wise to do that and may actually benefit the residential properties there would be the area around the bottling plant. So my understanding that would be streets like Butte Avenue and Shasta Avenue and so forth. The cost for doing that, I imagine, would be quite high to bring in the infrastructure there. And money is always the issue with getting things done, typically. And assuming that that is a possibility, going through all the bureaucratic stages to do, you're going to still need millions of dollars to do that. And if we get back to the concept of enhanced infrastructure financing committee, and it's complicated, and I'll skip it for now, but it's doable and something that should be looked at with respect to developing the two sites, north and south of the city.
I've heard from a number of people that they live around Mount Shasta and they don't feel that their voices are being heard in Mount Shasta, and they consider themselves Mount Shasta residents. And so it puts them in a very difficult place of not being in Mount Shasta, but being such a part of Mount Shasta. I understand from the orchard that they've been looking at annexing that in for quite a long time, and that there's just so many pitfalls and loopholes of trying to get through, and that we have to really strike a good deal with the county. Are they really willing to do the investment in the property to enhance our community? And if they're not, well, then they should let go of it and let us take care of it and be a community together. So, yes, that's going to be a lot of research to pursue. And I've spent many hours researching Crystal Geyser, and I would be happy to read those documents too. But talking with Ed, he says that it's been quite complicated.
Excellent. Last two questions. If you were elected, what would be your number one priority to get started right out the gate?
Get that city manager report out to everyone so you can tell if there's been a problem with the water, that we have had our tests come back not meeting the state requirement. And yes, for the majority of the people, it's not an issue. But there are many frail people, the very young, old, compromised, new people that really need to have that information quickly. And I think with our city manager report, we could have regular updates on our water and what's happening with our city. So really being open and transparent would be the first thing of getting this going again with our new city manager.
Most definitely the first thing I would push for is setting up of a SB 28 based enhanced infrastructure financing committee for the purposes of bringing infrastructure to the landing and possibly Spring Hill areas to get the economic development of the city moving forward as quickly as possible.
Okay, right off the bat, I want to take the people who were elected, sit down with the current city council members and the former city council members and inherit what they've done, because there's no need to throw it out and start over. We need to understand exactly where they're at, where the negotiations with Crystal Geyser, where are we standing with the EIR and the review of the EIR. All that information needs to be exchanged so that we can carry that forward in a reasonable manner. Also concentrating on the people that are elected into office. How can we work best as a team? You know, we have a large responsibility. We want to represent as many citizens as possible. So who are our constituencies? We want to represent all of them, but it's a lot of work. So how can we divide the work? How can we cooperate with each other? And along with Tim Stearns and Kathy Moore going forward to really create a great town for everyone.
I definitely agree with my three friends here as to what they're proposing. In my mind, if I had to put it in one word, what I would do, my first priority is going to be to listen to people. That sounds easy, but the idea is I'm going to be listening to my fellow council members. I'm going to be listening to my council members that are leaving. I'm going to be listening to city staff. I'm going to be listening closer. I'm going to try and get closer to the members of this community. I'm accessible at this point, just about at any time, by telephone or text. I'm going to make it more so. So people can say, okay, yeah, he actually made it up into the chair, now I will talk to him. Great, come talk to me. Let me listen to you, let me hear it, put everything down on paper, and let me find out what direction the city wants to go into, what the council needs to do, what the council has done, that kind of situation. So for me, it's really a case of continuing what I'm trying to do right now, and that's listen to the people of the community.
Great. Last question. If you are not elected, how do you plan to continue to serve the Mount Shasta community and stay involved if you're not on city council?
If I'm not elected, I'm going to be the guy that buys the first round of drinks at the bar. You're all invited. There you go. I've thought about this. What I have done in the past, particularly in the communities of Tehama County and in Shasta County, is in my land use planning career and keeping up with CEQA, and I've been the CEQA consultant to COS for 23 years. My wife is an architect. She built all the buildings and everything for most of the schools around here, that kind of thing, and that's how I was kind of roped into doing this job. The bottom line is I have been in a back room talking to people and giving my opinions when asked for 30-odd years. How do I feel about this? You tell me about CEQA because I know about it, and giving people my opinions. I did that with our current city councilors as well as with city staff. I had a nice conversation with the city manager today, and we actually broached this. And I said, hey, if I'm not elected, I'm still going to be available to the community. I'm retired, I have time. Anybody wants my opinion, I can tell them what I think, what I have seen, that kind of thing. And he was very, very happy with the idea that I'm still going to participate as a member of this community. That's where I will still be in it. I'll still be a participant.
Well, I've been serving on the Planning Commission for about 3.5 years. If I'm not elected, I will continue on as Planning Commissioner. If I am elected, I will resign from the Planning Commission. There at the Planning Commission, I really do like working with Juliana, the new planner. She's excellent. So if anybody's thinking about getting involved with city government, I highly recommend that committee. It's a great way to start, and that's pretty much training for city council. So because I've been involved with city government for 3.5 years already, it is the city government that has encouraged me to run, and they fully support me running. What else? I'm very involved in the library, so I would continue on as a member of the city library committee and continue to encourage, continue to encourage that group to get input from the community to see what they want in their library. I really do want to discourage these closed-door meetings where they think they have everything all figured out, they think they know what the community wants already. No, we need to really open those doors and invite the community in. And yes, that's more work, and yes, that's going to take more time, but imagine what we can do, what we can produce together. I think it's very exciting.
Well, if I fail to be elected and Barbara does, and then she resigns, I will apply for that spot. I would like to be involved with that committee. Is it a commission? Planning commission. Outside of that, I'm going into full-time mode with running the ice rink, and we do have some good news there. We'll have a full season, and this is a little bit of a promotion. So I essentially work for Mike Rodriguez on a volunteer basis as the ice rink manager. I will do that regardless of what happens to me election-wise. And we're looking at a 14-week season starting on Thanksgiving. That'll keep me very busy for that time frame. And then in the off-season, Friends of the Rink is the other organization that is tied to the rink. And we are its fundraising arm. And actually, technically speaking, we are the management group that runs the rink for the rec district. So that's what I'll be doing regardless of what goes on with respect to this election. Thank you.
I've been attending city council meetings for many years now, and if I'm not voted as a city council member, I will still be coming to city council meetings and reading emails and looking at the projects and questioning and bringing up different points of view. I hear from many other community members and I try to bring that information to the city council meetings. And so one side of the table or the other, I am semi-retired, and I'm a CASA volunteer, but being a part of this city and making sure that I can afford to live here and that others can afford to live here. And so I will continue staying involved in asking questions.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for your time this evening. We got a lot of questions answered. I really appreciate your time and your honesty. So that's it. Thank you guys so much.
Can I have their names again?
Oh, sure. Names again?
Late.
John Adamson.
Barbara Wagner.
John Statflip?
Rosamond Clay.
And this was
And Paul Eason.
I'm sorry, John Redmond meant to be here tonight, but he had something come up with his business.
Beer delivery, more beer delivery.
Yeah.
He's had sick employees now, so.
So, yes. So he had some stuff going on at work, so he couldn't be here, but